All right. Hello, welcome everybody. I see people here from all over the world, and yeah, please let us know where you're calling in from. It's great to have you all with us. So my name is Noah Yammer. I am the Communications Director at Hand in Hand, and welcome to our webinar, Learning Together, Thriving Together, about shared education in Israel with the Abraham Initiatives and with Hand in Hand. So I'm going to start with giving, first of all, as I said, we're on Zoom here together. Please use the chat whenever you have a question or something to say. Later on in the call, we'll be calling on you to ask your questions to our panelists. And as much as you can, keep yourself on mute. And if you want to just see the panelists, I think we'll be pinned so you can see us directly, but if you can't, then just you can put it on speaker view at the top left side of your screen. So I'm going to start with a little bit of background. We're going to see videos, get some introductions, and then around halfway through, we're here for an hour, we're going to start taking your questions. So please, as we're speaking, think about things you want to know more about so that we can really speak to your specific interests. So shared education in Israel. In order to think about, these two amazing projects that are really tackling this this important issue, we have to know a little bit about the background, right? So in Israel, in the public school system, there are separate schools, right? There are schools that are for only Arab children. There are schools for only Jewish children. Even within the Jewish schools, there are separate schools for religious Jewish children and secular Jewish children. And so schools and children grow up in this country completely separately. People, when a child is born and they turn 3 years old, they go into their classroom and then they're with only kids that are just like them. And now wherever we are in the world, I think we all can think about and understand, what happens to a child as they grow up and they only know people who are just like them. Right? What do they believe? What kind of ideas are allowed into that classroom or into that community? And what do they start to believe and think and learn about those people and those kids from those other schools and those other communities, right? They're getting so much information about who they are, those people from the other side, about what they believe, about what they want. They might have even experienced violence, right? We live in a violent conflict. But never have they ever actually met somebody from that place. And every person in our society, every adult that you've met or that I've met or that you see on the news, everyone went to separate schools. Everyone grew up without knowing the other ever really, usually having really met someone in a meaningful way. And of course, that impacts what our society looks like. And in order to meet that challenge, there are many people who see this and say, okay, well then what do we do? And today we have an exciting webinar. We actually get to hear two different approaches to how to work on this. Two approaches that I think really complete each other in many ways, although of course there are many other organizations as well who are working on this. The first we're going to hear from is the Abraham Initiatives. And the Abraham Initiatives was founded in 1989 in pursuit of building a shared society in Israel, specifically focused on equal and full citizenship for all people who are citizens here. And they work through advocacy through action. So it's about building structural change through programs and policy solutions that they test on the ground and then hand off to larger institutions who can really scale them throughout the country. And the specific program we're going to be talking about today, although they do many programs and many different aspects of Israeli society, today we're going to be focusing in on the shared learning program. And this is a program that was modeled after a program actually in Northern Ireland after the Good Friday Agreement, where schools are paired with each other, classrooms are paired with each other, and they learn together. And this year, every 8th grader in Gilboa region and in Akko is participating in this project, and it's also in cooperation with the Ministry of Education. This year, around 38 pairs of schools are going to be participating, and they're kind of poised for some exponential growth because the Ministry of Education is really kind of taking this on as a really broad project. And you're going to hear more from Rania on that. So that is that is one of the program projects that we're going to hear about. The other one is Hand in Hand. And Hand in Hand is a network of bilingual integrated schools where Jewish and Arab children are coming to learn together. It was founded in 1998. It's running for around 20 years. This year, there are 7 schools with over 2,000 students throughout the country. And these are schools that are bilingual. Children are learning in Hebrew and in Arabic with a Jewish and Arab teacher in the classroom. The schools are public schools, so they're funded by the Ministry of Education. But that covers around 50% of what Hand in Hand does, and the other funding comes from philanthropy and from parents' fees. And we also, in addition to these schools, also run community programs and other educational programs that really take the impact beyond just the schools themselves out into communities for adults, for alumni, and into other schools and the school systems, creating educational materials around bilingualism and multiculturalism that we can really be a part of broader impact in society. And so both of these programs are really taking on shared education. So right before we head into hearing from our speakers, we're actually going to watch a video. So the first video we're going to watch is about Abraham initiatives, and then we're going to hear from Rania. And after that, we're going to watch a short video about Hand in Hand and hear from Efrat, and then go into questions. So without further ado, hold on one moment. I'm going to share my screen.
Meet each other and start talking to each other and start discovering, oh, we like the same YouTubers, we follow the same Instagram influencers, and all of a sudden they're doing TikTok dances together. It's an amazing process to watch. They're learning that in actual fact, they're not much different from each other. When they're in the shoes of the other, they can understand the other more. The Shared Learning Program is a program that brings together Arab and Jewish schools at the middle school level to teach the students together as a group of one community. The students actually meet in 8 separate occasions, each time in one of the 2 schools. So 4 times at the Jewish school, 4 times at the Arabic school.
بقلب الصف في عندنا معلمتين، معلمة عربية ومعلمة يهودية.
The program was specifically and intentionally designed to be in English because English is a universal language, it's an international language, and it's a language that both the Arab students and the Jewish students learn in their schools. However, when they come to meet, they know that they have the challenge of knowing the other's language, whereby English is actually a neutral and a natural playing ground for them. The challenge is the same for both sides, and this is an important starting point to make sure that the students are working at the same level from the very beginning. Students work together, they learn together, and they speak together in English. And this is a great step forward for the students who don't have much opportunity to talk in English elsewhere during their daily classes.
What else is different when I'm speaking a language? You can understand everything when it's face to face, not like when it's on computer or behind screen.
المعلمات استفادوا وكل معلمة أثر في الثانية بما تملك من مهارة ومن תפكير ובמעرفة. תוך כדי העבודה עם מייסה, למדתי עוד דרכי פעולה אחרות, בין אם זה עזרים לשיעור ובין אם זה ההוראה עצמה, גם מעבר לפרויקט. كان عندنا بعض المخاوف من هذا المشروع باعتبار انه هون في تلاقي حضارات مختلفه، تلاقي فكر مختلف بين بعض البعض.
بالاول جيت شوي توتر بس بعدين خلت الطاقه الايجابيه تملاني عشان اجي مع طاقه ايجابيه.
לאט לאט עם הפעילויות והיכרות והשיח, היה ניתן לראות שהם מתחברים אחד לשני. תלמידים ישבו בקבוצות מעורבות, כן דיברו אחד עם השני מעבר לתכנים, גם בהפסקה.
זה היה כיף כזה להכיר את האזור הזה ואת התלמידים פה. וזה כאילו לא מה שאני רגילה אליו, וזה כאילו היה מרענן כזה.
إشي كتير حلو لأنه منه بتتعلموا إنجليزي، منه بتتعرفوا على ثقافة جديدة.
The values behind the Shared Learning Program are values of cooperation, diversity, empathy, acceptance. The vision for the program is that it becomes part of every student's life in Israel, that all Arab and Jewish students study together, that it becomes a part of their daily life. It becomes something that they do on a daily basis, having a shared life and a shared education together with the others. We invite you to come and share our program. بو لقاخذ خلك تعالوا كونوا جزء من المشروع.
Thank you for that. So with that, I'm sorry. With that, I'm going to, Rania, are you here? Yes, perfect. I'm going to hand this over to Rania Lahem-Grayeb, who is the Shared Learning Pedagogical Advisor at the Abraham Initiatives and helps to run the Shared Learning Program. Rania.
Thank you very much, Noah, and thank you all for joining us today. It's evening here in Israel. I know it's the afternoon in the US. It's a pleasure to be with you all. It's a pleasure to introduce to you our program. Our program has been running for 4 years as an English language program. Prior to it being an English language program, we actually tried other different topics, science, maths, different topics. But what it came down to in the bottom line that we found was that when we wanted our children to work together, we wanted them to work at a place where they came in as equals. So what do we mean by equals? We needed them both to work in a language that was not their first language. And this is how we came to the choice of working in English with an English curriculum. And here we actually developed a curriculum based on the topics you heard in the video. We have 8 major topics which we've developed an intensive curriculum that can be used by Year 8 students, Year 9 or Year 9 students. And that includes things like diversity, empathy, cooperation, dignity, dialogue, and media literacy. We chose these topics because these are values that we believe in that are important for shared learning. When we bring kids together, when we bring them together from a Jewish school to an Arab school, it's not perfect, okay? It's not perfect and it's not always easy. And what's interesting in actual fact, what we found to be interesting is that the project works differently with students who live in a mixed city versus students who actually live in separate cities. The students who live in separate cities, entirely separate, who don't have any contact at all, okay? They may not meet an Arab or see a Jewish person at all in their entire life. In actual fact, they are more accepting of meeting each other. They are more interested in learning about each other. And in those areas, we've actually had great success, immense success beyond our expectations as to where the project would go and where it would take us. Vis-a-vis working in mixed cities. Now, as you're aware, the situation in Israel since last May has changed quite dramatically amongst between the Arab and Jewish citizens, and in particular in the mixed cities. This became a challenge that we saw and we had to deal with. In our program, before the students even meet, teachers have to do what we call uninational lessons with them. These are lessons that are done in their national language, and they are lessons which are talking about their fears, talking about what the kids think will happen, asking all of the questions that they're curious about, asking questions and seeing if there are questions that they can ask, or basically running through the issues that could come up in a shared lesson. And in some areas, it's enough to do one of these uninational lessons and then bring the kids together. In the mixed cities, since the past year, we've actually had to do more intensive work on the uninational level because of the conflict and the violence that we saw in the last year that really affected the way the project worked. Whereby in non-mixed cities, we found that there was actually students who wanted to ask about, who wanted to see the other students. They cared about each other. They wanted to meet with each other. And this came after being with each other for 2 years. Our program actually runs for 2 years in each school. And what that means is that the same group of students, they start with us in 8th grade and they continue on in the program in 9th grade. So they have 2 years of getting to know each other, 2 years of really talking to each other, 2 years of learning about each other before the next round comes in. And what we found is that these 2 years really impacted differently in different places. And what we found beyond our expectations was that even when the entire country was in conflict, that actually the kids from the separate cities wanted to see each other. They wanted to know what was going on with the other. They wanted to know what was happening to their friends, because they really do consider them their friends. We were so proud of this. We were so proud of the fact that even though we were concerned about what could happen as a result of the conflict, in actual fact, we saw a really positive impact. We only wish that positive impact could have been all throughout the country. And here's where our project has this year faced different challenges. This year, we're focusing on two areas. In the past, we worked all over the country, from the north to the south of the country, working with schools who are geographically close to each other, and they wanted to be part of the program. So we had 40 schools working with us in the past. This year, we're focusing specifically on two specific regions. One is the mixed city of Akko, and the other one is the Regional Council of Gilboa, which actually has 2 Arab villages and 2 Jewish kibbutz areas. So they meet together in the Gilboa, and the schools in Akko meet together. What's been interesting is that the kids who started with each other last year, before the conflict and before the challenges and before the problems, were immediately happy to cooperate and work with each other in this year, another year of shared learning. What we found, though, is that the students who had not been part of the project in the last year actually needed a lot more work on overcoming their trauma, overcoming the situation whereby their neighbors were part of the conflict. They were involved in the conflict, whether they wanted to or not. So this year has been more challenging for us, but at the same token, this year we've had much more support on an institutional level. For the first time, we've actually had support from the municipalities. So whereby in the past, the municipalities gave us permission to work in their areas, this year, the municipalities are actually supporting the project. And they're giving us buses to use, they're giving us their staff to help us support the project. Different areas have different giving, but that to us is amazing. That to us was a big step forward, because it's showing that the municipalities understand that they need this in their area. And in actual fact, this year, we took an even bigger step, whereby we worked in 1 class per school. This year, we're taking the entire year level of year 8s in every school, which means all of a sudden, it's not just 25 or 30 kids per school that get the experience, it's 180. So when it gets to that size, you can imagine it gives you all sorts of new challenges and all sorts of new experiences. And that's been important to us. That's been really important to us. And what's also been important for us is that this year, our program is advocacy through action. So what do we mean by that? It means that not only are we working in the field, not only are we working to ensure the project is actually progressing and is actually succeeding, but we use this, and we use the results of these programs to convince the government that this needs to happen on a daily level everywhere in the country. Our program should not be just the responsibility of our organization and other organizations that work in shared learning. Our program should be the responsibility of the government to ensure that every Jewish and Arab student meets at some point in their education system and learns together. And I believe, and I have a dream, that the law that was put in Northern Ireland for education, shared education, will someday, perhaps, and I'm very optimistic, will be something we will see here in Israel. One day, every Arab child and every Jewish child will have at least one day of education together.
Thank you, Rania, for that vision. Rania, I wonder if I could ask you just a really quick question. If you could just say a little bit about just who you are, where you're from, about yourself, and then we're going to move over to Efrat.
Sure. Okay, everybody's probably wondering this accent that I've got. I was actually born in Israel to Palestinian Arab parents in the north of Israel, and I grew up in Australia. I'm a trained teacher from Australia, but I moved back to Israel 20 odd years ago, and I've continued to work in education and advocacy for education through organizations. And that's brought me here to this program where I've been the pedagogical advisor for the past 3 years.
Thank you so much, Rania.
My pleasure.
And for sharing about the program. So now we're going to move over to Hand in Hand. We're going to watch another quick video and then hear from Efrat.
Jews and Arabs don't live together, don't get to know each other. I think it's very rare to find places when Jews and Arabs really see each other as equals. And this is where we need to create a big change.
The whole educational system is built historically as a separated system. Many times we live in different cities. We watch different media in Hebrew or Arabic. We speak different languages. We have different cultures. And what Hand in Hand is trying to do is change that situation. We're creating schools which are bilingual, they're multicultural, all cultures are equally part of the school. So everything we're doing is bringing together and doing it on an equal basis.
It's all about taking ownership, responsibility, and really getting the tools to impact society. At the end of the day, I'd like my students to be not only aware, but feeling capable to affect our reality. This is what our school does. It creates us the ability to work toward this direction from very, very young age. It's very hard changing adults. But for them, it's natural to have an Arabic kindergarten teacher or a Jewish first grade teacher. And that's something that gives us a lot of hope to the future and very important in the Israeli society.
That's, I think, the pluralistic view of Hand in Hand, is saying we have to get acquainted with each other. We have to learn about each other deeply, not only on the surface. We want to be a beacon for the educational system in Israel and for society in Israel to learn how shared society works. Celebrate that diversity in a very open and pluralistic way for everybody.
Okay, so yes, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Efrat, who is the principal of the high school in Jerusalem, the Max Rain Hand in Hand High School in Jerusalem, and has also served in many other positions at Hand in Hand over the years, to tell us about yourself and your work and Hand in Hand in general.
Thank you, Noah. What a great video. I haven't seen that before. It's nice. Hi, I'm Efrat Meyer, or Efrat Meir in Hebrew. I'm the head of the Hand in Hand High School. I've been working in this place for about 15 years. So it's my home. And I have 2 daughters who go to the school. I started working here way before I had a family and daughters. And now I have 2 daughters studying here, speaking Arabic and loving this place. When you introduced us, Rania and me, and our initiatives, you said you explained how we bring together the 2 sides. And I think what's really interesting about our place that we create a new side. I think that our students, as opposed to us, the adults, see the world in a bit of a different way. They do know who they are. They have a very, very clear identity. They're Palestinians and Jews. They define themselves in different ways and different levels, but they do grow up together and see each other as equals, as friends. They study both languages. They know about each other. They experience life that other kids are not experiencing in Jerusalem or in Israel. In many ways, religiously, they know about all religions. they celebrate or remember the memorial days together. Next week, we have our first National Day, Palestinian National Day, that we study together about it, and I can't say celebrate, but commemorate, or yeah, there's a word for that, right? A better word. And this is something that is very new, although it's been 20 years. It's very new to Israel. It's still not very common, but we do take part, I think, a very major part in inspiring other schools and other places. And we work together with other initiatives to create, as Rania said, and I think this is words that I totally agree, the opportunity for Jews and Arabs to develop shared life, to develop a way to end the conflict and create a better future for everyone in here, in this place. No, you have to give me some questions, otherwise I'm going to get lost.
Great. I wonder if you could explain, like, first of all, can you say a little about who you are? Why do you do this work? Why is this important to you?
I think it's very interesting to begin with. It's very, very interesting working with different people. I love diversity. I think diversity is something that makes my identity, at least, very, very clear, and at the same time allows me to develop something else, to develop a third way, not a political third way, because this is not necessarily a good thing, but just like create a new culture of people, of diverse people. I believe in education. I love the idea of a school that allows kids to grow in a different way than their parents and challenge that and challenge their society and influence their society. And I think this is something very good to be part of. And I think what's really interesting in our model is taking something of the day-to-day life of every person, I think, almost around the world, which is a school, a place you have to go every day. And on top of this everyday concept, you put on top of it the idea that a school brings together people that never meet each other in other places, or they do meet, but not in an equal way. They don't study together. And we create a day-to-day life. And through that model, we develop a way to deal with days of violence and holidays and national days. And even on top of that, which is like the obvious thing that we need to deal with, I think it's very interesting to develop curriculums that deal with gender, environment, science, Hebrew and Arabic, civics, all those things. Studying together brings a lot of different issues and different questions and problems. And whenever there are problems, you need people to solve the problems, and you create people that are more creative and teachers that want to change themselves. And I think this is a very effective way to change our society. I think that even for the people who decide just to visit this place, like a teacher that comes for a year and then decides that it's not exactly the place they want to be, they still live this place a little bit different than the day they started working in this place. It's a place that changes a lot of people's mind. And not everyone chooses to be part of it, but it's still very influential. I can look at my family and I see what a big difference in my parents and my brother and my aunt and the people that are around my Friday night, Erev Shabbat, the Friday night table, how they change their perspective about Israeli politics, about Arabs, about our position as Jews in Israel. So I think that each one of us in this place influences so many people around them. That I love it. I feel very honored to be part of this movement.
Amazing. Thank you for that so much. So now we're going to take questions. There's so much more to learn about both of these programs, of course, but we'd love to do it through your questions. And it'd be great if we could actually pin all three of us, if we could spotlight the three of us. Okay, so we have I'm just going to call on people who have written questions in the chat, so feel free to come off mute, or if you prefer that I ask them, that's also okay. It looks like we have a question from Taylor. Taylor, do you want to come off and ask the question? If you're there. Okay, I will ask the question. So the question was, there are actually two questions here. One is, how do you balance the need for cultural diversity and the need for social cohesion with the fundamental right to the existence of a separate religious education in a pluralistic society? So meaning, let's say there's certain people who really want to be learning separately, and maybe that's okay. Like, how do you kind of balance those two things? And the other question that they asked was that sometimes contact doesn't always lead to positive relationships. Sometimes being in contact could lead to a negative relationship. So how do you deal with that? So I'd love to hear from both of you on either one of those questions, if you want to answer. Rania, do you want to start?
I think the first question may have been actually more for Efrat.
Yeah.
Choice. Yeah.
What about the second? Why don't you go for the second question then?
Yeah. Look, okay, now I'm lost. Can you remind me what the second question was?
Yeah, the second question is, what happens if there's some negative, like if the contact could lead to negative associations with the other? It doesn't always lead to positive ones. How do you deal with that?
We're not living in utopia. We're not. These are kids, okay? They're human. They have good days, they have bad days. And that's why, we expect the unexpected. We're all teachers. We know, and it happens. It happens, but we deal with it immediately. We don't let it sleep the night, as so to speak. Literally, if something happens, and it did happen, just last week, we had 2 classes meeting for the first time in Akko, and the teachers opted to do an outdoor day, and we kind of told them that's maybe not a good idea to take kids outdoor first time, but they did, and there was a stone thrown. The teachers immediately stopped the activity. They talked to the kids, and they talked to all the kids. They didn't just talk to the child who threw and the child who it was thrown at. They made sure he was okay, and they tried to find out what went on between them. But also it meant that everybody needed to learn from this, and everybody needed to understand what was going on and why. Okay, so in a situation where there is something that's negative, if somebody swears at somebody, if somebody, whatever it can be, and with kids, trust me, it can be many things. We try to deal with it on the spot. We have trained facilitators who are actually with the teachers. So they're conflict management, conflict resolution facilitators. They're experts in the relationships between Jews and Arabs. They are there and they support the teachers. They don't run the program, but they support the teachers. So any guidance that the teachers need, they're there for them. But very usually after a session like that, before the kids meet again, not only would have been dealt with on the spot, but after they meet again, they have to do another uni-national lesson. There has to be another discussion about the rules, okay? Physical harm is not allowed. So yeah, we deal with it on the spot. We don't let it sleep the night.
Thank you so much, Rania. Efrat, I'd wonder, how do you deal with that in the context of this ongoing school?
I just want to add to Rania's that, kids, sometimes they swear and have fights. It's like, it's natural. It's a connection. And it does, in our school, it happens, maybe not very often, but it's part of the school. And actually, it's natural. This is, it's okay.
Yeah.
But we deal with it, and it's not necessarily Jews and Arabs. It's whatever. But I want to talk about identity and say that I met my Jewish identity when I moved to the States. I lived in New York for a few years. And this is a moment where I met my Judaism and the fact that I'm Jewish, and I had to deal with questions of what's my identity. And And I think that growing up next to people that are very different than you, it's something that is very, very good for your identity, because you have to ask big questions, and you're not accepting the identity that is, you know, being set to you by other people or by the regular education system. And interestingly, I meet the teachers in that position when they say, we come from Jewish schools, we come from Arab schools, and we see that our students, their identity is much clearer and stronger than ours. So the Palestinian identity of our students is sometimes more clear and more maybe progressive than the teachers themselves. And this is something that is happening because we talk about identity all the time, and we ask questions about that, and we're very critical about that. And we ask the kids, what do they want to put in, and what kind of identities do they have? And also allow them to develop identity of people who believe in shared society in Israel. And this is, I think, something that is very positive. So we enlarge, I think, their ability to create identity together with allowing them to be very different than each other. They know exactly who's Jewish, who is an Arab, who comes from where, what's a Palestinian identity, who's religious, who's not, who's Ashkenazi or Sephardi. All those things are part of what we do in here. We talk about the differences. So sometimes teachers sit in my room and say, wow, we're so jealous. How come we didn't grow up like that? And I think this is a good sign for education system when the teachers are inspired, get inspiration from the students and not only want to inspire others. So I hope I made it clear.
Yeah. Thank you for that. The next question I'd love to take is from Richard Robbins. Are you interested in coming off mute and asking your question?
Sure. My wife and I were curious how you handle controversial issues, or do you, such as the Nakba, Zionism, and other issues that may arise.
Thank you so much. That's a great question. Yeah, I'd love to hear from both of you on that. How do you deal with the Nakba, about Zionism, the nation state law, things that are controversial?
Rania, do you want me to start with it? Yeah, okay. So first of all, we give space or a place to all of those ideas. We talk about the Nakba, it's part of our curriculum. We teach the two narratives, the two main narratives, the Palestinian and the Jewish Israeli narrative in history classes. We do that from a very young age. The elementary school in here, the elementary bilingual school, talk about the Nakba from very, very young age. And this is part of our education system. It creates conflict, and it creates conflicts in different ways in different ages. As kids grow up, they have their identities being developed differently. It starts in a very concrete concepts of identity when they're in elementary school. In middle school, they start understanding their social connections. And in high school, those ideas are meeting their political identity together with issues of army, of the Jewish students. And we have a dialogue class every week of 2 hours that we discuss issues, other issues also. This is, I think that gender issues sometimes are more controversial in our classes than Nakba and Zionism. And the kids are agreeing sometimes not to agree. I mean, they know how to disagree with each other, and they know that kids are coming from different families with different stories. We use a lot of family stories that kids can relate to. And I think once they know each other personally, and they know the families, and they visit each other, and the personal connection is something that helps us to deal with the difficulty of talking about difficult issues like Nakba or Zionism. And we're all different. I mean, we have vast ideas about Zionism in staff room, and also different ideas about Palestinian nationality. within the staff room, maybe a little bit less. I think Zionism is a wider spectrum.
For us in our program, these issues come up, the national issues, they come up more when they're talking about their identity. And they also come up when we talk to them about media literacy, how to see what goes on in the media and how to look at it with tinted glasses, how to not believe everything at face value that you hear, how to investigate it further, how to ask people, and how to talk to others. So for us, because the students meet maximum 12 times physically via the schools, it's not at such an intensive level as the hand-in-hand, which is daily. So for us, it's a lot easier because they're a lot further away, let's say, from the national days.
Thanks to you both. Now I'd love to go to Gail. Gail Baker, would you like to ask her a question?
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you. And thank you for this fabulous and important presentation. It's fantastic work, so appreciate it. I'm wondering about your graduates. Do they take this lived experience that they're having and take it into their future selves? There's I think a long enough history now, especially with the school in Yerushalayim, that you might be able to track. And do you track what happens to them and what they do, and do they continue on? Thank you.
Yeah, we do know what they do. We're being invited every summer to many weddings. And this is hand in hand in Jerusalem is a family. We do know what the kids are graduates. We know exactly where they study, what they do. We follow them for years. We have an alumni coordinator that does activities with them and meet them after they finish high school. I want to say something about, do they take the values? I think after years of being in our school is more than taking values. I think your mind is wired differently. I think that you think differently about the world. I think you're a different person, someone that met really different ideas and concepts from a very young age. They grow up differently. So not necessarily they go into the field of working in NGOs or working in those issues, but wherever they go, there are people that are able to see the other side, to feel empathy to the other side. They can move between the cultures in a very, very easy way. They know both language. They connect with different people very easily. Many of them talk about the first day in the university when they don't know really where to sit, with the Jews or with the Arabs, because the Jews and the Arabs sit separately in the classroom of the university. And they go into the class and it's not so obvious where they sit because they feel kind of belonging to both groups. So in many times they feel that they're bridging between the groups. Many of the Palestinian students, they come into university without knowing Hebrew so well, and then in hand graduate with a fluent Hebrew, comes into the class, and this is a meeting point for everyone. And this is something very natural for them. I know they all go to higher education. I know they all want to influence and be influenced by the surrounding and the political, the right side of politics. They participate in activist groups, but even without that, I think they make a change wherever they go. And we see that, and also just being a place that they feel that they want to be connected to after 5, 6, 7, 10 years, it's meaningful. They still think that this school is part of their life. So I think it says a lot. Maybe not all of them, but in very high percentage.
Rania, do you want to speak to this, or should I give you a different question? Yeah. So the other question that was given that I think is more relevant for you is questioners, do you have any religious schools involved in your program?
When we talk about religious schools, we're talking about the Orthodox side of either communities. For now, our programs are run with the government schools, the state-funded schools, and the state-funded schools are usually non-religious. They're Jewish, they're Arab, but they're not Christian or Muslim or Jewish per se. They're not Orthodox. So for now, this is the playing field that we're working in. And in actual fact, one of the successes we've had in the project this year is that in the coming academic year, the government is actually going to support 100 schools to participate in this program next year. So I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, actually, the next question I had in a private message was just what's your relationship with the government authority like? So maybe you can just continue from there, and then I'll go to Efrat with a different question.
Our program the whole way through has been with the support of the Department of English, with the Department of Shared Life in the government, in the Ministry of Education. So the whole time the Ministry of Education has been up and aware of what we're doing and how they're doing. They've been our partners. This year, they're becoming financial partners, which is nice. So in the coming academic year, it's the first time that the government is actually going to support 100 schools to participate in the program, or 100 pairs, sorry, to participate in the program, 200 schools. And this is really important. And this is something we're working with constantly. We're constantly reminding the government that this is important, that this is something that's needed, it's something that's urgent. And in actual fact, the conflict of last May shed a huge spotlight on that for the government, and it affected the entire way that they've been taking all of our meetings with them and our position papers to them. So this year, it's moving in the right direction, and we're hoping that it'll grow even bigger.
Amazing. Efrat, we also had a question here about how the Ministry of Education monitor the curriculum development, and is that path? Oh, that's a different question. How about this? What's your relationship like with the Ministry of Education?
Pretty good. We don't have major issues with what we teach. We're a small school. Nobody really comes inside and check it. It's not threatening anyone. And so far, the things that we wrote, like programs, curriculum, that we got approved by the Ministry of Education, I feel that the people in the Ministry of Education, maybe not the politicians, but the people who work in the Ministry of Education, like what we do. I'm sure that if we're going to say, I'm sure that as long as it's not threatening the system too much, it gets approved. But actually, we're kind of influencing other places also. I think that we work in Jaffa. I know that Hand in Hand as an organization works in Jaffa and kindergartens, and we work together with other schools, and we have activities that are influencing other schools, and it's fine. I think there is a place also to our way of our educational system. There's a room for that, I guess, for now.
Yeah, I think that in both of the organizations, at some point when certain government authorities learn about these programs, they actually start turning to us to say, hey, we want to do this in more schools. So I know that that's happened at Hand in Hand to go and try to impact more schools, and the same thing, I think, also with the Abraham initiatives and bringing more and more. Bringing more people. I want to go to a question just about Siva. I see your hand. I wrote you a message. If you could just reply there and let me know, and then okay. So I want to just say, what's your vision for this work? If you looking ahead and looking forward.
Vision or dream?
Yeah, we'd love to see this. I know actually, Rania, you did talk about this a little bit. But I wonder if
yeah. Look, in Northern Ireland, they have separate school systems. We all know that. There's the Protestant system and the Catholic system. But one day a week, every week, the Catholic child can choose to go study at the Protestant school because they have certain subjects that they specialize in that he really wants to be in. And the Protestant child can go study at the Catholic school because they have certain subjects that he wants to be in. Each school has their specialty. And that's how it works. Why can't we have the same? We know at the moment, unfortunately, the budgets that go towards the Jewish schools are much higher than what goes to the Arab schools. We know that there are better science labs, better gyms, better facilities in general in the Jewish schools. So at the moment, it would be great if once a week, and this is my dream, that eventually we will get to a situation where it's totally normal for a Jewish child to wake up on Tuesday and say, right, today's my day to go study in the Arab village and to learn Arabic culture, Arabic language, Arabic history. And an Arab child on that same Tuesday can go, oh, I'm going to go learn computer programming at that school because they've got a really good system, and I'll learn it in Hebrew, and I'm going to go study with them a little bit about their history because that's on the same day. Why not?
Beautiful. Efrat.
Wow, Rania, I love it. It's like Meatless Monday, but just of good stuff. Yeah, that's great. I want to be fired. I want to be fired, and people will say, we don't need your school anymore. This is what we do everywhere. I think all schools should be like yours. We're not special anymore. And I don't know, do something else. I would love to see other schools taking a lot of what we do in our schools and making space for others. And I think it's going to really heal the Israeli society. It's going to change many things within the Israeli society, but also heal it. And I feel that it's that I work every day in a place that brings a lot of hope and a lot of healing to this painful place. And I would like it to be expanded. So yeah, but I don't really want to be fired right now. I still need a job. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We're going to close. We're at the end. So I just want to say thanks again to Efrat and Rania, a little clap of snaps. It's so inspiring to listen to both of you, and actually really also for me, so gratifying to be here with more than one organization to kind of remember that actually we have so many partners here in the field, that we're not alone doing this work and that we're doing it together, and partners with all of you who have come here to listen to us, who chose to be here to with us today. Really hope that you stay in touch, that you come visit, and that we meet again soon. We're going to be sending you all an email right after this with a quick kind of survey. If you have any feedback for us, we'd love to get that from you, and to share our stories so more people know about the work that's happening here. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Bye, everybody. Yeah, we love getting your messages in the chat. If you have something to say, then yes, please. Really wonderful to be with you.